Big man. It looks like I showed up right on time. Just a little bit about myself. A lot of people I've seen before, but born and raised in Columbus, Ohio. Joined the Marine Corps right out of high school. Hoorah. Did 4 years in the infantry. Married my wife Josie, kind of right at the end there. Spent the next 12 years putting myself through school at Ohio State on the GI Bill. Got a political science degree and a minor in criminology. Got hired at a police department in Columbus, Ohio. Spent 12 years there, 7 as an officer, 5 as a sergeant. And then in 2021, we had an opportunity to move my wife's professional organizing business here in Florida. So we took a leap of faith and ended up down here. So I ended up joining the RAC, and one thing led to another. And now I'm running for state committee man. I'll be happy to represent the voters on the ground in Palm Beach County. So please vote Colt.com. Thank you.
Good, thank you, Sean. Yeah, I'll make this real quick. John Fisher, retired paramedic fireman captain, retired as a captain from Palm Beach County Fire Rescue, serving District 5. Thank you. And I've lived in District 5 for over 35 years, so I've got deep roots. My platform is basically the budget's out of control through the roof. I believe you gotta drain your own swamp before you get to DC swamp, and Palm Beach County's got a hell of a swamp. So I want to get to it, want to get to the roots to it, want to get an outside auditor to come in and look at the books in a conservative way to say basically this is constitutional, that's not. This is constitutional, that's not. And right on down the line. So basically that's it. John Fisher, johnfordistrict5.com. That's my website. Please take a look at me and please spread the word. Fisher for Commissioner. Thank you. Thank you, John. Take it away, Jessica.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to We the Locals podcast and tonight's Palm Beach County Republican primary debate for sheriff. My name is Jessica Jansen, and for those not familiar with We the Locals podcast, myself, along with my co-hosts, Josie and Abby, do our best to educate you on local issues in Broward and Palm Beach counties. We also interview local candidates and local officials. We do our best to make it fun, easy to understand, and informative resource for local politics, simplifying local government so you are more encouraged to take your self-governance seriously when you head to the ballot box. You can check us out online at WeTheLocalsPodcast.com. You can check out our Rumble and YouTube channels for more of our episodes. Please consider a donation to help us keeping you informed. We hope tonight will give you a good insight into our Republican sheriff's candidates looking to earn your vote. Mail-in ballots are already arriving. Early voting starts August 10th, and Election Day is August 20th. We kindly ask our audience, including our moderators and candidates, to silence your cell phones. We want to make sure our viewers at home can hear our candidates in their entirety without interruptions. Please refrain from yelling, talking, or any disruptive behavior. One of these candidates will be elected on August 20th to be on the ballot in November. Please welcome Lauro Diaz. Please welcome Michael Gauger. Both candidates can join me on stage. We're going to start tonight with our invocation. Please bow your heads. Thank you, God and Creator. We gather here today to engage in a spiritual and respectful exchange of ideas. Let us approach this debate with open minds, a willingness to listen, and a commitment to truth and understanding. May our words be guided by your wisdom, our thoughts by clarity, and our hearts by the spirit of cooperation. Thank you, Lord. Amen. We're going to also start with the Pledge of Allegiance. John Fisher is going to lead us in the pledge.
Please remove your ball caps if you can, please. Thank you. Flags are here. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, John. The format for tonight's debate is as follows. Our We the Locals' favorite button pusher and volume adjuster, Stuart Jansen, is going to keep time this evening. The clock will count down for each question. Stuart will hold a yellow paddle when there's 30 seconds remaining and a red paddle at 10 seconds. Once the time is expired, the clock will beep and the timer will then reset. Each candidate will have to present their opening statement. The order has been determined by a coin toss that took place earlier this evening. Our moderators will ask each candidate a series of questions, alternating between the candidates. Candidates will have the equal opportunity to answer. If a candidate references their opponent in their response, the reference candidate will have 1 minute to respond, after which we will move on to the next question. After all the questions have been asked, each candidate will have 2 minutes for their closing statement. Allow me now to introduce tonight's moderators. We have Albert Cacace. He is a Vietnam-era veteran and the owner of R30 Agency, a private investigation and executive protection company that also offers firearm proficiency training. Albert is a member of the Republican Party Executive Committee of Palm Beach County. Josie Machovec has been a Palm Beach County resident since the age of 5. When Josie graduated high school, she moved to Israel to serve in the Israeli Defense Forces. She ran for local office in 2020. She joined the Palm Beach County RAC and was the campaign manager for Marcy Woodward's successful bid for the Palm Beach County Board of Commissioners. She now co-hosts with me We the Locals podcast and manages local campaigns. Welcome, Josie. Josie and Al, I will now turn the night over to you, our moderators. Thank you for taking it from here, and you'll hear from me again later this evening.
Let's give our Jessica a hand for. I think you found your career, Jessica.
Thank you. I'm so tired.
All right, let's get started here. So we're going to start with current event. Something that's going on today, huh? Opening statement. Oh, we're going to start there, that's right. Yeah. Opening statement. All right, so it starts with Mr. Diaz. We flipped the coin that I had it backwards. My apologies. My apologies, sir. Mr. Gauger, you'll start with your 2-minute opening statement. Thank you.
Well, welcome, and thanks for joining us here tonight. And we hope that you'll be able to establish a background for the two candidates and pick the best choice. Yes, I've worked here in Palm Beach County for 5 decades, all at the sheriff's office, except for 1 year when I retired the first time and went to work at the state attorney's office, working on cold case homicides. Together, working with one of the detectives from the sheriff's office, we solved 2 of those. I have the experience. I started at the bottom. I worked myself up all the way to the number 2 position in the agency. I served 16 years as the chief deputy and in charge of law enforcement and then corrections. So I have to take a look. Those are the things that when you consider administrative experience, I have that administrative experience. I've served all for this county. In fact, I served South County here for several years as your captain before there were 2 other districts, before there was Boca and North Boynton. My office worked out of Delray at the courthouse. And we watched all these homes being built. 35,000 a year were being built down south here. I watched your developments grow up. So I think when we continue on and you get a chance to listen to both of us, you will look at our records, check our websites out, Google, and you'll be able to make a good decision.
Mr. Gauger, Mr. Diaz, 2 minutes.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me? How about now? There we go. Good evening, everyone. My name is Lauro Diaz, and I am running for sheriff of Palm Beach County. I also work at the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office. I worked there for 27 years. I also worked at Honest County Sheriff's Office for 4 years, and I also worked at Barton Police Department for 2 years. So I have a little bit of experience just outside also of the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office, because I think that's extremely important. My education is real simple. It's a bachelor's degree in science and criminal justice, a master's in homeland security and emergency management. I served in the U.S. Armed Forces, did my actual full-time, came out of the Army, military police corps, so served overseas in Korea, little time in Germany, and then with the 4th Infantry Division in Fort Carson, Colorado. At the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office, I commanded some of the toughest divisions, or actually the toughest divisions. The Organized Crime Bureau, Criminal Investigations, Training Division, SWAT Commander, Patrol Commander, and so forth. I have a lot of experience in all fields of law enforcement. I am a people person. I know what the county needs. My entire family lives here in Palm Beach County. My parents, until they passed away recently, my sons and my grandchildren, my sisters, you name it. So I do have ties to this county, because some of you are wondering. And on top of that, I actually lived in this county for 40 years. So that being said, I know that you are welcome to go and look at my site. I have the qualification, I have the right platform, I have the right drive, and I have the right attitude. And I did not do 16 years as a number 2 guy. So therefore, I have my own mindset of the way things need to be done. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Mr. Diaz. So as I said prematurely earlier, we'll start with a current event. The topic, yes, my partner here is reminding me to tell you that these questions have not been shared with either candidate. Candidates, would you agree? You've not seen the questions? Okay. All right. First topic is open borders and terrorism. So you've all seen on the news that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu arrived in the United States yesterday to deliver a historic 4th address to Congress yesterday. President Biden and Vice President Harris were not there to greet him. Violent protests erupted in Washington, D.C. In Washington, D.C.'s Union Square, demonstrators wearing pro-Hamas headbands lowered American flags and raised Palestinian flags in their place. So we know that there's a threat to our country and our local community. FBI director warns of dangerous individuals coming across southern border. FBI fears coordinated attack on U.S. homeland. That's ABC News. Washington Post, the FBI director's concerns over terrorism are at a whole other level. Bringing it home, closer to home, DeSantis declared a state of emergency in Florida because of Israel-Hamas war. Pro-Palestinian groups clash with pro-Israel groups in Boca Raton. Chaos at FAU. Tension boils over 3 arrests following pro-Palestinian march on campus, Palm Beach Post. So, anyone paying attention has to be concerned about the threat that this poses to our security and that to the free world. Mr. Gauger, are we prepared for what's coming, and how will your administration prepare us for what appears to many to be a future of uncertainty?
Building partnerships. That's what I excel at. I built partnerships throughout this county. If you remember, the 9/11 pilots, they lived in Palm Beach County. After they flew into the towers, we went out and they interviewed the neighbors of where they were living. And the neighbors said, we were so suspicious of them, but we never called anybody. We never called the police. And that's what's necessary, folks. We all need to work together so that this does not happen again. We have to be the eyes and ears. And that's what's important when you have police officers who work neighborhoods, who build relationships, who talk to people. Yes, they will then come forward and give you the information on people that are suspicious. There's where we need to make our strides, along with having the best intelligence unit and working with all the different agencies from the federal government and the state government.
Thank you, Mr. Gauger. Mr. Diaz?
I take it as the same question. Thank you. Completely different approach. Partnership's great. That's for my staff to handle the partnership. Building bonds in the community, I'll direct the staff to do that. My job as your sheriff, though, is to make sure our men and women are equipped to handle that kind of situation that happened today. My job as your sheriff to make sure that we have the equipment, the training, and the right plan of action, not wait till they're burning down the cities or destroying the monuments or whatever it is that they're doing. I have no interest whatsoever in trying to develop any kind of partnership with any group that supports any kind of extremist that goes against our Constitution, that goes against our freedom in our country. I actually left, my parents got me out of Cuba because it was a communist country. Because there you are allowed to do and say whatever you want to say against yourself, not against the government. It's just the opposite here. Here, you're allowed to do everything, burning flags, which I'm 100% against. I made this very clear in my last 4 speeches. If you think I'm going to stand by and watch thugs burn down our flags, throw rocks and bottles over men and women in uniform, and say nothing and have them hold the line, you got the wrong guy for sure. Those barricades will be moved, we will engage, there will be arrests made, and people will be charged and prosecuted. I'm all for the First Amendment, I'm all for freedom of speech, but folks, you have to obey the law first. You have to follow our constitutional laws, you have to follow our state and local laws. If you can't do that, then I have no obligation to put up with your stupidity in our county. If you come here to destroy our county, we're going to take you down. That's my answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Diaz. Next question is regarding community engagement. Mr. Gauger, how do you plan to foster? Oh, can we start? Oh, yeah, we crossed that out. My apologies. Mr. Diaz, first to you. How do you plan to foster better relationships and trust between Sheriff's Office and the communities you serve, especially in undeserved areas?
I've been doing my whole career. The only difference is as a sheriff, I can actually advise and direct our men and women, or commanders specifically, to leave their office, to get out from behind their desk, to go to the communities, to go to homeowners associations, to go to parks, to go to churches and engage with the community. Have local meetings with them. There's homeowners associations just about every single month in one community or another. We need to be attending those meetings, listening to their concerns and addressing their concerns. Then come back, I'll direct you to come back with me with an operational plan as to what the problem is and what the cure and response is going to be. It's real simple, but you can't do it. It'd be silly for me to say as a sheriff of myself, I can go out in a community as large as Palm Beach County and actually make this happen. You have to trust your men and women in uniform. You have to trust your commanders and your divisions and your units, and you need to get them out there. Now, that being said, I've always been in the community. So I feel very comfortable walking into any community at any level and communicate with them clearly. And speak to them about their concerns, and speak to them about our concerns. Because that's something that's always left out. We are always wondering what is the concern of the citizens, but yet there's no one ever asking what is the concern of our law enforcement officers, men and women. So we need to find a neutral ground where we can talk and open dialogue and say, hey, listen, we want to come into your community. We want to provide you with services. We want to assist you. We want to listen to your concerns. But at the same time, I am asking you to please listen to ours. Take our suggestions, and I'll take yours. That's the kind of leader I will be. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Diaz. Over to you, Mr. Gauger. 2 minutes.
I have the history. I have the history of going into the communities. I have the history of teaching community policing. I have the history of teaching partnership for the Department of Justice. I did that not only here in Palm Beach County, I did it at the Palm Beach College, I did it through other police departments in South Florida. It's important that we have that relationship. I oversaw 4 region meetings, and we had representatives from all the different neighborhoods come into those regional meetings and share with us any information or problems that were going on. In fact, when we look at community policing, the 2 key components, and this is forgotten by many, are partnerships and solving problems together. That's where you build the relationship. I think if you go to my website, you'll be able to see people who have been interviewed and are talking of that. I don't plan on doing that. I have done that. I have built those relationships. throughout this county, from Boca to Belglade, to Jupiter, and everywhere in between. And that's what I plan to continue doing. Teaching our officers how to build that relationship, rebuild the community policing division at the sheriff's office to what it was some years ago, where we built and brought all people together, all people, the toughest neighborhoods, where we cleaned up crime and developed after-school programs and brought in police athletic leagues. We turned those neighborhoods around and built a relationship that was very, very important to everyone and to us. So they stood by us in those communities, and they speak very highly of what was done. So they're where we need to go, and that's what we'll continue to do. Thank you.
This question goes to Mr. Gauger first. Once elected sheriff, how would you ensure that schools and houses of worship are safe in Palm Beach County?
Well, history will speak to itself. I did that back during 9/11, when the Muslim community was extremely afraid that they were going to be targeted. We provided security for them. We provided security for the Jewish synagogues. And there's where, if we don't do that, what happens is what we've seen around the country. So by building relationships, providing that security, doing the training. I happen to be the chairman of our security committee at my church, along with being on the church council. And I set up a whole program of protection, getting cameras, working and letting access to the police to have those cameras available. And we'll continue to do that. We will build relationships, have those meetings, and help our churches and schools be safe. Working with the police, we even brought in fire rescue and trained in what we call active shooter. Before that, fire rescue did not train with us. So we taught fire rescue how to go in with us. We protected them. In fact, there were injured children or teachers. They stood behind, they set up a command post, a deputy behind to protect them. And folks, that's the way to handle the problems in our schools and for safety. So.
Mr. Diaz, same question, schools and houses of worship.
Yeah, I believe the question was, what are we gonna do as sheriffs? I don't think that was answered at all. First of all, we reach out to the synagogues, like house of worships, or schools, whatever the case may be, and we offer them training. We offer them education. We assess their buildings for security. We work with their security people and explain to them where the key points to stand, what to look for, how to react to an active shooter. That's my plan. When we have law enforcement officers and we know we have a high crime area or high potential target of a terrorist attack, why not have our men and women in uniform who are sitting behind a closet writing a report? Why not park at that synagogue's parking lot? Why not park at that school? That's what I will be directing them as your sheriff. And to clarify something, 9/11, I was also there in 9/11. And I don't recall any of them he just said. That was under Sheriff Ed Bueller, may he rest in peace. It was his and his staff who did that. My opponent and I were equal ranks at that time in the agency. And we were not doing what he just said that we were doing. That was directed by Sheriff Ed Bueller, so I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
Per the agreed upon rules, if a candidate is acknowledged during another candidate's speech, then that candidate's 1 minute rebuttal. So Mr. Gauger, you have 1 minute to rebut.
Well, he's completely wrong. Yes, I was there, and yes, I worked with the Muslim community during 9/11. You can check with those, and they will tell you that we provided security throughout this county for them. My opponent can say anything he wants to, but the truth is the truth, folks. So that's where I stand, right there.
Okay, moving on. This question is about nonviolent offender rehabilitation. Mr. Diaz, what specific programs or initiatives would you implement or support within the sheriff's office to help inmates successfully reintegrate into society upon their release?
None for felony, 0. I support 0 for felony. Non-felony, misdemeanor crimes, absolutely. I'm all about providing help for them, especially, I am interested, that's one thing that my opponent and I do agree, in bringing back the drug farm. I have no problem with that. I have no problem getting them psychiatric treatment if that's what they need. But that is off the table for anyone that commits a felony in this county. I will not take your tax dollars and spend them on rehabilitating felons, creating social programs, because the last time I checked, and I've said this a million times already now, a victim does not choose to be a victim, a criminal just makes that decision to be a criminal. And yet we do nothing for victims, so why am I gonna take your money to rehabilitate a criminal and do nothing for that victim who suffers from PTSD for the rest of their life? So that's not me, I'm not gonna pretend to be that. Same thing with streetlights, parks, sidewalks. I'm not gonna build parks, I'm not gonna build sidewalks, I'm not gonna put lights in. That's not my job as your sheriff. My job is to provide security for you, your family, and your community, period.
Mr. Gauger, same question.
When we look at building relationships in communities, I did that, folks. So if you go to my website, you will see videos of people that have successfully completed the sheriff's drug farm. I have always supported recovery and mental health treatment. I have a master's in social work. I got that as an adult. I got it in my late 40s, early 50s. I have a sensitivity because you know what? My jail, 85% of the people there are there for crimes committed while under the influence of alcohol and/or drugs, or are mentally ill, or many times dual diagnosed. So the issue there is you've got to get them the treatment they have. If you go to my website, you will see interviews. You can see it out at my table. There are interviews with people that are now straight and sober for 31 years. Some of the toughest drug guys in town. They went to the drug farm and they got straight and sober. An inmate cost me $25,000 a year. At one time, we had 3,400 inmates in our jail. By working and changing behaviors of people, no matter if they're misdemeanors or felonies. Hey, I sent a lot of people to jail. In fact, listen to those interviews and they will tell you, my daughter will put you in a jail in a second. But if you want to get straight and sober, we can work at that too. I've served on mental health boards, I've served on recovery boards, and we work at getting people together and getting them straight and sober and solving and putting them back in their families.
Thank you, Mr. Gauger. Next question to you, Mr. Gauger, is drug and human trafficking. Mr. Gauger, returning to the consequences of open border policies, fentanyl and other dangerous drugs are killing citizens at alarming rates. In fact, I have here in 2022, 107,941 people were killed by drug overdoses, which, by the way, a little side note, is that the firearm homicide rate is like 45 a day, and that drug overdose is 295 a day. So back to the subject at hand, we're seeing an increase in human trafficking as well due to the open borders. As a private investor, I found that our greatest challenge is jurisdictional or weakness in interagency collaboration. As sheriff of just one county, do you believe you can make a meaningful impact here, or are there issues by and large that they belong in the hands of the feds?
Well, I always attended the Palm Beach County Police Chiefs Association. The current sheriff did not. I also attended the Criminal Justice Commission. It's important to build those relationships, not only within the cities and the county and the state and any organization that we can identify that will help us solve that problem. Yes, trafficking is insane. We discovered homes that were built and rented by undocumented folks and turned into 15 different partitioned rooms and bringing these poor girls in from out of country to work and provide services to the other undocumented inmates. We shut them down. We identified them in the communities because people came to us and talked and told us what was going on. So we moved in there, we attacked that problem, we shut those places down, we got the girls the help that they needed. That's the important thing. And then share information. You don't just arrest people and take them to jail. You take the time to talk to them and get additional information. And we were very successful with it. When I worked South County here, we took our time, we had to teach officers, just don't book them and book them, sit and talk to them and try to solve additional crimes and see what other information they have. I actually taught interview and interrogation at the college. And that will help you develop additional information that will recognize people who are committing crimes in your neighborhood, who are doing trafficking, and we need to put those people in jail.
Thank you, Mr. Gauger. Mr. Diaz, same question, human trafficking and drug trafficking, please.
The first thing we have to do is we need to increase our men and women working in the organized crime bureau. Back in the 80s when we faced the epidemic of crack, 80s and 90s, that unit was, or that division was 172 men and women. I know because I was their commander. Today it's down to, I believe, under 80. I would have to double check on that, so don't quote me on the actual 80. So we need to build that main unit back up the way it used to be, and we need to get the right people in place and build that partnership with our municipalities. But that's the easy part. The hard part is how do we make an impact on human trafficking? That's not a plan. If you know anything about human trafficking, you know the sex trade is only maybe 15% of human trafficking. The other 85% is forced labor, right? So we need to go out to these farms. We need to talk to the individuals that are working out there. We need to talk to their bosses and just have a conversation with them. Hotels, #1 abusers. Restaurants, #2 abusers. It doesn't matter if you're working with the federal government, state, or local. That's here in your town. So again, you need to know what the problem is. You need to know where it exists. You need to go and identify these people. If you notice that you have 25 housemaids working at the Hilton, and none of them speak English, and they all get picked up at the same bus, that might be a little telltale sign that there's a problem, folks. So you need to intervene there. Again, understand what you're facing, come up with a plan and work it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Diaz. The next topic is actually in two parts, and the subject matter is organizational efficiency. And we're starting with Mr. Diaz. The political initiative known as DEI, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, is a cancel culture initiative that has made its way into corporate C-suites, HR departments throughout the country. It has prioritized how we look over meritocracy, leading to serious concerns over declining quality of service in virtually every sector, including education, transportation, government, and some assert that DEI was a contributing factor in the security breach at Donald Trump's July 13 rally. Mr. Diaz, is DEI an issue in the current sheriff's administration? What, if anything, do you believe is necessary to keep DEI out of law enforcement, legislatively or otherwise?
Thank you for the question. As a sheriff, it really doesn't much impact me what the federal government is actually saying or directing based on their directives. It'll be what I believe is good common sense and what best works for our community as your sheriff, because a sheriff is a constitutional officer, and he or she will do what's best and what's correct for your county. So keeping that in mind, if I see that it needs to either be enforced or not enforced, that's a decision I will make when I sit there. I cannot speak for the current sheriff as to how he's handling that situation or not, if he's even handling it at all. So I can't intelligently speak to you about that or answer that question. I can tell you that I will review it, whatever it is that's going on in place now, and I will make my own assessment, and I will be transparent with the public, and I will let you know if it's something that we need to pursue or not.
Thank you, Mr. Diaz. Same question to you, Mr. Gauger.
I think it's very important that we treat all employees correctly. All employees. For promotions and transfers, it doesn't make any difference who they are, or what background they have, or what ethnic background or sexual preference. What's important is, are they doing their job? And that's where we need to identify those who are not doing their job. And right now, there's a problem with that, because there's outside forces that are pushing promotions, that are pushing transfers, and it's creating a real difficult problem at the sheriff's office. So we need to be fair and equitable. We need to take testing and make it fair across the board. DEI has its place, but not when it overrules common sense and fairness in treating your employees. Everyone needs to be treated equally. So when we hire people, look at Miami River cops years ago. They made all kinds of exceptions for hiring. And guess what happened to them? They had a terrible problem. Those guys that they brushed over their backgrounds, hired them, they ended up killing people, robbing people, dealing drugs, stealing drugs, and we can't have that. You have to find the right applicant. If we have to go to schools and help train them, that's okay too. We'll send them to the academy because we'll find the right candidate. But you find the youth, we work with youth, we have organizations where the children, young teenagers can get used to working with the police and have a history so that when they're eligible, boom, they come right in and go to work.
Okay, the second part of this question goes to Mr. Gauger first, or this topic. A healthy organizational culture is key to attracting and retaining motivated and talented staff. Organizational culture flows from the top down. As sheriff, how will you create and maintain a positive work environment that encourages pride and satisfaction in your deputies and staff?
I think I have 5 or 6 awards for team building. Team building, folks, during my career. Yes, that is so important. You had fairness and equity, and I mentioned that before. When you get away from fairness and equity, then people get angry, they get disillusioned, they get frustrated. You can't let certain individuals in the department promote everybody. We saw things where people failed backgrounds that were related to some of the top administrators, and the next thing you know, those guys who did the backgrounds were fired. A relative was set up to backgrounds, and within a month, those relatives were hired, even with very sketchy backgrounds. That does not send a good message at all. And fairness and equity across the board, and working with your employees and giving them the support that they need, the salaries, everything that they need to do their jobs correctly. I believe that accountability is most important. If you brush over and let everybody get by with inappropriate deeds, and I've seen that. I've seen where they brush past investigations that where people should be held accountable. But because they were connected to somebody, they weren't charged. That's not going to happen under my command. Everybody's going to be treated fairly and equitably across the board. I believe in unions. I brought that union to the sheriff's office in the 70s. But you know what? Sometimes unions get out of control, and we can't let that happen either. They don't dictate promotions, they don't dictate transfers, and they don't dictate discipline, period.
Okay, Mr. Diaz, healthy organizational culture.
You lead by example. Like you said, on the beginning of the question, start from the top down. So you have to hold yourself accountable first. The way you behave, the way you speak to people, the way you treat people in the agency. And then that flows downhill. You make it very clear to your staff that we're going to treat everybody with equality and respect. Now, there are times where you have to be tough in this job. There are times where you do have to suspend someone. There are times where you do have to fire someone. And there are times where you do have to arrest one of your own. And you have to be able to do that. And I have no issues or no problems whatsoever doing that. The only thing I do differently is that I believe in 100% transparency. Whatever action I take, it will be there for public record, and it will be there immediately. But I will also talk to our men and women down the line getting, especially with your frontline supervisors such as your sergeants who got the number one impact on all your men and women out there in uniform. For those of you that are not in law enforcement, it's actual fact. A sergeant will make or break that entire squad. What comes out of that squad, whether or not they're going to be good leaders in the future, whether or not they're going to be good law enforcement men and women, whether or not they're going to be good community relation type officers. So setting the bar high for those sergeants right off the get-go, let them know what you expect, goes a long way. It's what I've done my whole career, and it's what I will do as your sheriff. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Diaz. The next question is about technology. What role do you see technology playing in modern law enforcement, and how will you implement new technologies to improve public safety and officer efficiency?
I believe technology, really today, more than ever, starts with body cam, right? I mean, that's the question everybody wants to talk about, everybody wants an answer on that. I am extremely pro body cams. I'm pro body cams because I was actually accused of something that I didn't do, and I wish I would have had a body cam because it would have exonerated me immediately instead of having to go through an investigation. So that's one part of technology. The other part of technology is drones. That's something that we can definitely incorporate. I know Sheriff Bradshaw has a huge drone program going on in the sheriff's office. I want to expand on that. I'm hoping that one day we can expand enough to where we can actually pull back a little bit on using the helicopter, which is extremely expensive to you, the taxpayers of Palm Beach County. There's also intelligence data gathering techniques out there that you can buy, that you can use. I know our CAD system, that's our computer aided dispatch system. I know there's been a lot of talk about that at the sheriff's office. Some people are for a new system, some people are saying it's a waste of money, and some people say that we've wasted too much money. But again, for me to actually make a sound decision on that from this stage, I can't do that. I have to wait till I'm in office and I have to take a look at it. There's a lot of new technology, but less lethal, right? Our job is to preserve life, not to take life. Unfortunately, sometimes we have to, but that is not our number one priority. Our priority is to preserve life. There's a lot of new tools coming out every single day that allow men and women in uniform to engage a suspect with the new technology that perhaps will allow us not to have to go to deadly force. I'm very open-minded to that, and I'm looking forward to looking into each and every one of those items. Thank you.
Mr. Gauger, same question, use of technology.
Absolutely. Technology is very important. And recently, for the last 10.5 years, we were working on something called a record management system. They spent $48 million. And I can't tell you how many countless of employee hours spent working on it. We even had to hire outside people. That program was all finished. It was finally developed about 3.5, 4 months ago. It was ready to be beta tested and put in place. $48 million. The week that it was finished, the administration came in and said, oh, we're going to cancel that. We're going to go with Axon. And now I'm told that program is going to be up to $100 million to implement, and it's going to be several years before it goes in. We talk about body cameras. 7 years ago, I had a plan all in place to bring in body cameras. The current sheriff was against it until recently, a couple of years ago, he finally was forced by the commission and encouraged to get body cameras. They're important, but you know what? It's not everything. Also, the cameras in the communities and building a system with us where the community can share their cameras with it. So if we have to respond to a school, we can pull up those cameras and we know what's going on immediately. We can also, with businesses, they'll share their camera programs with us, and we can then help establish a perimeter. We know what's going on, and our guys can go in safely instead of having a problem and going in cold. So technology is extremely important.
Thank you, Mr. Gauger. Also to Mr. Gauger, this question has been answered in different ways already, but let's stick to the program. The subject is transparency and accountability. Wait a minute, what are we doing here? Yeah, right. Training and professional development, my bad. Mr. Gauger, how do you plan to enhance the training and professional development of the deputies to ensure they are prepared for many challenges law enforcement faces today?
I taught at the college for years. I taught all kinds of programs. And training is one of the most important tools to build an efficient and effective agency. One where your deputies know how to deal with people. First of all, I was the one that brought crisis intervention training to the sheriff's office about a decade ago. When we couldn't get it, that's a 40-hour block of training. When you couldn't get everybody trained, I brought in mental health first aid. That's an 8-hour block, and we were able to then train those deputies that were waiting to get into the 40-hour block. That training makes a big difference. You also have to encourage constantly ethics and integrity. Ethics and integrity in dealing with people on the street. You have to look at your use of force. That use of force can get out of control very quickly, and it causes the agency tremendous liability when it comes to civil penalties. And our department, that sheriff's office, has paid out huge payments on those actions of deputies. And then you find out several of them were covered up. And it all came out in the civil action in a court of law. So training, holding people accountable, making sure your supervisors follow up and do what they're supposed to do. They had a use of control, it was called a blue form. It used to come up the chain. It would come up sergeant, lieutenant, captain, major, colonel, and then to my desk. I read them and I sent a bunch of them back. Well, that happened about 5 or 6 times, and I found all of a sudden I was taken out of the chain, and it just went over me to the sheriff. We can't let that happen, folks. We need to hold our people accountable.
Thank you, Mr. Gauger. Mr. Diaz, training and professional development, 2 minutes.
Given a 40-hour training class at the college, hoorah, great. Running the training division at the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office, that's hands-on. That's what I did. I actually implemented the programs, actually developed the actual lesson plans, actually implemented them out in the field at our ranges, in our gyms, and our vehicles, all tactically sound. Learning how to use less force to overcome a threat without having to take someone's life. That's what we need to be looking at. We need to bring back the red man suit again. We don't fight anymore in training, very little. We need to get back to that. We need to have physical contact again. We depend too much today on tasers. We depend way too much on less lethal, such as OC spray. And that's great. But I'm here to tell you that sometimes that doesn't work. So what you train your officers, your men and women in your training division during their in-service training is what's going to keep them alive and is what's going to save your life out there as a civilian. So as a commander of the training bureau, I know exactly the type of training that the sheriff's deputies, men and women need. I know what I want to bring, and that does include ground fighting, and that does include an MMA expert, so that we can do that instead of going for a service gun. Because the quicker we get a subject down to the ground, the less force we have to use. And that's what you need to be thinking. 40 hours in the classroom at the state college is not going to cut it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Diaz. Now to transparency and accountability. Mr. Diaz, what measures will you implement to ensure transparency and accountability in policing, particularly concerning use of force, incidents, and misconduct?
As your sheriff, as soon as I can provide you with the open information of the investigation, that's not going to hinder our investigation, that information will be made public. I've criticized many law enforcement leaders for using the go-to line of, we can't talk about it because it's under investigation. That's just a go-to line. Sometimes that's true, but more often than not, you certainly can. You can put out a certain level of investigation. Also with our internal affairs investigation. They're public records anyway. Those become public record anyway. All you have to do is request it. And you have a right to go to the sheriff's office, take a look at it. So why am I going to hold it back from you? When we make a mistake as your sheriff, here's the difference. We made a mistake, I'm going to come up in front of the TV cameras, in front of you here, and I will tell you that we made a mistake. And and I'm extremely sorry for it. And we're going to train our men and women to not make that same mistake again. But hiding it, denying it, and turning your back on it, that's where you get in trouble. You can see it over and over again. So that includes transparency, but it also includes honesty, something that we're missing in law enforcement quite a bit. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Diaz. Mr. Gauger, same question, transparency and accountability.
I've always been transparent. I will continue to be transparent. In fact, I was the one that discovered certain issues with criminal actions by our deputies, where in one case, somebody was killed in an illegal pursuit, an unauthorized pursuit. A stolen car going from Lake Worth all the way up to Jupiter at 110, 115 miles per hour, and our officers lied about it the whole time. Well, that was hit out. That was taken past 180 days of the policeman's Bill of Rights. Nobody was held accountable. I recently got a copy of that IA report, and it said, oh, well, our officers were following a stolen car, and for some reason she hit another car and then lost control, and no deputies were held accountable. Folks, that's wrong. We have to be transparent. We have to be honest. No matter who you are, no matter what your connection is, you have to be held accountable. And you know what? I will have an inspector general. I've already got one in mind. He was Inspector General of HUD, Housing and Urban Development, and he will oversee internal affairs. He will oversee budget and accounting. The people will be held accountable. And then we will use that for training. But we're not going to cover things up. And I've always been transparent with the media. In many cases, there were issues where the sheriff disallowed me to talk to the media about cases that occurred. That will change. We will talk to the media, we will share with the media, we will give them the truth as to what really happened in incident after incident.
Okay, this next question is regarding mental health and addiction. It goes to you, Mr. Gauger, to start with. The current sheriff's office plays a major role in providing mental health services in Palm Beach County. In fact, there was a rumor that the sheriff will stop providing these services if he does not get the budget that he is requesting from the Palm Beach County Commissioners. Do you believe that the sheriff's office is an appropriate source for effective provision of mental health services? If so, why? And if not, how would you suggest that the provision of mental health services be done differently?
Well, the current sheriff talked many times about the mental health problems in our jail, that we are the leading mental health treatment facility in this county. You know what? We are. But he's only been over there twice in the 20 years he's been here. I have a master's in social work. I did 8 months of 16 hours a week attached to the mental health unit of our jail. I'm very familiar with it. I helped enhance that unit. 2 psychiatrists, 2 psychologists, social workers. In fact, I even helped some groups while I was doing my internship for my master's degree. Folks, I believe in getting people straight and sober. I believe in getting people to mental health. The behavioral services unit had 2 supervisors. One was a captain who had a PhD. The other was a sergeant who had a PhD, and both were licensed clinical social workers. The current sheriff went in, removed those 2 men, and put a SWAT guy in charge of the unit. And now they're doing red flag laws. Red flag laws. You know, red flags are important, and mentally ill people who are making threats should not have those. But the sad thing is, they're not getting the attention in the community. You know, the sheriff has lots of money. That's almost $1 billion. And he's telling the commission that he can't afford mental health deputies or a team, that he needs more money for that. Folks, that's incorrect. That's incorrect. There is enough money to do this correctly and have the right people in charge of that unit so that you get the help to those people that need it.
Thank you, Mr. Gauger. Mr. Diaz, same question, mental health and addiction regarding the sheriff's office.
Evaluate what's in place, take a look at it, see what the actual cost is, talk to the men and women who are actually providing the services over at the jail, if that's what the case is, the case that we're talking about right now. And then check, see how much it would cost if we outsource it. And then do a comparison, maybe bring some companies in and have them put a bid in. You know, you have to think as a businessman, as a sheriff also, because it is almost $1 billion budget. So maybe somebody else can do it better and cheaper than what we can do in law enforcement. If that's the case, I'm all open-minded to it. Now, I will review that when I get into place. Now, my only concern here is that, were you not over the jail? Were you not over the jail, sir? Thank you, Lord. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Gauger, you have 1 minute for rebuttal.
Thank you, Laurel. You know what? Yes, I was in charge of the jail. That was one of the things I oversaw. And you know what? I built that unit. We designed it so that people got the help that they needed. In fact, when those that came in were extremely mentally ill and the jail stabilized them and then the courts released them, well, the unit that I was overseeing and that the 2 social work law enforcement officers oversaw, they made sure that we followed up with them and made sure that those people that were released stayed on their medication. Because what happens when they get off their medication? They go right back in, and it's a revolving door of justice. And many times they commit serious crimes. But if you keep them on their medication and make sure that they're doing the right thing, then folks, they stay straight, they stay sober, and we can monitor them as is needed.
Okay, thank you. Moving to the next question, collaboration with other agencies. Mr. Diaz, how do you plan to collaborate effectively with other law enforcement agencies, local government and community organizations to enhance law enforcement and overall public safety?
Excellent question, and I'm actually excited about that one. Actually, I want to attend all the Chiefs Association meetings. I want to make sure that I am part of their meetings on a monthly basis or quarterly basis, however it is that they meet. That's number one. Number two, I also want them to partake in our meetings internally in our agency. Crime, it moves, folks, right? So we can't just say, well, it's in Palm Beach, it's not the problem in Lake Worth if it's happening in Palm Beach. Well, we have vehicles, we have bicycles, we have airplanes. Crime doesn't discriminate based on boundaries. It crosses boundaries every day. So it's extremely important that we work with all our brothers and sisters in law enforcement, with all municipalities in the county. And that also includes the state level also. So that's number one. Number two, when it comes to the community, it's extremely important that we set up a panel where community leaders can come and we meet with your sheriff. Your sheriff must be accessible to them, at least on a quarterly basis, where we can have maybe divide the county to maybe 8 sections or so and have a representative from each section come over and sit down with the sheriff and explain to them what their concerns are. And then we in return can explain to them what we can or cannot do about it. But listening to them, giving the opportunity, I think that's important. So you have to be aware and you have to be transparent with it. Thank you.
As a number 2 officer, I attended those Palm Beach County Police meetings. They were important. I didn't have a vote because the only vote was the sheriff, but he did not attend. I attended the Criminal Justice Committee meeting where representatives from all the municipal departments also attended and tried to solve problems of our county dealing with the crime issues. Folks, it's most important. If you look at my history, you will see that I built partnerships with everybody in the county, with all the different county organizations. That's why they built parks. They didn't have one neighborhood park. Now we have 30. I fought for the first one. Now we have 30 neighborhood parks. We got streets, lights, we got sidewalks. We cleaned up neighborhoods. We worked with code enforcement. We worked with solid waste. I built partnerships, and that's what I believe in. Partnerships are important. I have the history of doing that. I just don't talk about it. I have the history. And if you can check my record, and you will see that those things were accomplished and that it made a huge difference in communities across this county. So take a look at the records, take a look who's already done it and not just talked about it. That's what's important.
Thank you, Mr. Gauger. Over to you, Mr. Gauger. All right. Collaboration. No. Right here. Budget management. Budget management is the topic. The sheriff's office has a budget of nearly $1 billion with a B dollars, excluding grants. Mr. Gauger, as sheriff, how would you ensure fiscal responsibility and transparency in managing this budget while assuring the highest standards of law enforcement and public safety?
Well, look at my history. Again, history. Do your backgrounds. I have an excellent credit rating. I have no debt. And I will deal with the sheriff's office the same way. I believe in bringing in an inspector general. I already talked about that. That inspector general will hold not only accounting responsible, they will hold the division heads accountable. I found ways to save money. As an example, we had a bicycle program. They were spending about $2,600 a bike outfitted. By the time I got done, we outfitted those same bikes with $900 and saved a ton of money. There's ways to save money. You look at all that you're purchasing, but if you don't watch what's going on and you don't hold people accountable, and that's part of the problem that we see on a regular basis, people are not held accountable. They did away with staff meetings. You can't do that. You gotta have staff meetings. You gotta communicate from district to district to district. You gotta bring people together and make sure that they're working together. That's what's important. You need to hold people accountable. When you look at some of the deputies, there's no activity. There's virtually no activity. And that's where there was a program called ComStat. They identified a Marine unit that went one whole year and wrote one ticket, only one ticket in a year, and that ticket was written on a hard road, nothing on the water. There's where the mistake is made. You have to have people held accountable, you have to look at what's going on and make sure they're doing the job that they're supposed to be doing. And I will make sure of that. And I have a history of holding my people accountable.
Thank you, Mr. Gauger. Mr. Diaz, any question about budget management?
No, I'm sorry for that, it won't take that long. You have to just be open with a budget. You have to make it public. You have to let the citizens know what you're spending the money on. You have to do that audit, and you have to turn it over to the media and have them present that audit. And then if you don't agree with the way we're spending the money and I can't justify it to you, then you bring it up to my attention, Mr. Sheriff, and then we correct it. It has nothing to do with the job that the men and women are doing. Thank you.
Right, okay, so, thank you, Mr. Diaz. All right, so the next section is U.S. Constitution. That's a two-part question. Yeah. Okay, I gotta put my glasses on, all right. This is a two-part question. I will deliver the first to Mr. Mr. Diaz. My apologies. It's complicated. Sheriffs swear an oath to uphold the U.S. and state constitutions. For this reason, sheriffs may ignore the demands of state attorneys, for example, when they believe doing so upholds the law, protects constitutional rights, and serves the community's best interest. There have been several instances, especially recently, where sheriffs around the country refused to arrest individuals despite demands from politically motivated state's attorneys. In just over 3 months, in November, a progressive Democrat may be elected right here in Palm Beach County for state attorney. First question, Mr. Diaz. When the state of Illinois passed its Protect Illinois Communities Act, they banned the sale and distribution of AR-15s and high-capacity magazines. Senator Chris Murphy, Connecticut Democrat, on CNN's State of the Union, lamented, quote, "The majority of county sheriffs in this country have declared that they are not going to enforce state and federal gun laws." He continued, "They have decided that they are going to essentially refuse to implement laws that are on the books," close quote. Mr. Diaz, how would you respond to demands of judges and state attorneys who pressure you to subvert constitutional rights?
State attorney, congressmen and women will not be pressuring me because I will not take the time to listen to their idiotic statements. That's number one. Number two, I will protect your constitutional rights, both state. More important though, my friend, you need to understand that as a constitutional sheriff, my number one obligation is to the citizens of the county that I serve. And if I don't feel, or if I feel at any time that your rights are being violated or those laws are prejudiced towards you, I will not enforce those laws. And I will explain to the people why I'm not. Now, if something changes in our community where the vast of the community says, no, you're a sheriff, but we believe in this change, well, that changes the dynamics. But I come in with the attitude first that I'm here to protect your rights. So the answer is no, I will not allow them to pressure me or move me in that direction. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Diaz. Mr. Gauger, same question.
I agree somewhat with my opponent. I would tell you that, yes, they have come in and passed insane rules and regulations. Personally, for weapons, I'm a life member of the NRA. I'm a Golden Eagle member of the NRA. I believe in the Second Amendment rights. However, we can't do it ourselves. I may be your constitutional sheriff. I'm going to protect that Constitution. I'm going to protect both not the federal and the state constitutions. But I'm going to tell you, I can't do it myself, but I will build the partnerships with, guess who? We the people, folks. We the people are the ones that work together and hold everybody else accountable and hold those judges accountable and hold those people that are making those rules. If that state attorney is not acting correctly, you know what? We the people, and I'll leave it. We the people will get with that judge and get him straightened out. Or we will get with that state attorney and hold them accountable. Or we'll go to the governor. The governor has replaced some of those state attorneys who were not doing their job. I will not allow that to happen. I see that too much right now with all kinds of issues. They refuse to take their construction fraud. You know, they keep saying it's a civil. Yeah, one guy with 20 different victims, and he keeps saying, well, it's a civil case, it's a civil case. No, it's not. It's a criminal case. And that state attorney should be held accountable, and we need to get a state attorney in there that will work with us and hold people accountable.
The second part of the question, during the COVID-19 pandemic, some sheriffs refused to enforce state or local public health orders, such as mask mandates or business closures. For example, in Riverside County, California, Sheriff Chad Bianco publicly stated that he would not enforce the state's stay-at-home orders, arguing that they violated constitutional rights. This question is for Mr. Gauger. Did Sheriff Bianco make the right decision in this case? And as sheriff, how would you have handled COVID-19?
We did not lose an inmate during the COVID crisis. We had our inmates wearing masks. One of the first things I did is we went to our sewing department, our corrections sewing department, inmates making masks, and issued each inmate a mask. We lost some deputies during that period of time. But guess what? You can't tread on somebody else's rights. If somebody has a business and they don't want you wearing a mask in there, then they have a right. They have a right. You have a right not to wear your mask, but then they have a right not to provide you with the service that you want. So, we're not going to arrest people for not wearing a mask, but we may arrest you for refusing to leave a business that doesn't want you there because their right is, and it's their business. So don't tread on other people's rights. That's important.
Mr. Diaz, any questions, COVID-19 restrictions?
I think he was right. That was the first part of the question. I also believe that I would not mandate wearing masks. I think there's a lot of people that have health issues. I think there's a lot of people that are claustrophobic. I know I have some in my family. So I think it has to be a personal choice. I do agree with my opponent on the fact that when it comes to businesses, if you have the right to say no, I don't want you coming into my business, and then that becomes a civil issue. So I would never try to make an arrest on a civil issue. You guys can work that out in the civil court. I will provide you with a report with the case number, with the facts of what happened, date, time, and location, and parties involved, and then you can work it out in civil court, but I would not lock you up in the county jail because you weren't wearing a mask. Does that take care of it? Thank you.
Okay, so that is the end of our both general questions. We're going to move into one directed question each that is specific to each candidate specific. So my first one is to Mr. Gauger. Investigations into the notorious Jeffrey Epstein and his time spent in Palm Beach County Jail suggest serious flaws in the supervision of his work release program. With the new law in Florida, with the records being released, this is a topic that a lot of people are very interested in. In response to allegations by 3 young women who claimed to be sexually abused by Epstein while on work release, you were quoted as saying in the Palm Beach Post and the Daily Beast, "That would shock me if the deputies allowed someone in." There are reports that deputies failed to keep accurate logs of his movements and that the cost of work release duty was paid for by Epstein. In what, in fact, was your role in overseeing his work release program, and if true, who exactly received payments from Epstein? Could you explain a little bit more?
Sure, be glad to do that. We received Jeffrey Epstein by a phone call that said, "We're bringing Jeffrey Epstein over to your jail. He's going to do 18 months in the jail," even though it was 2 felony counts. We said, "No, he's got to go to state prison." Oh no, the deal was he was able to come to our jail and do his 18 months. When he got over there, they brought a plea agreement that said he will have the benefits and privileges of all other inmates. Our policy said if you had 3 prostitution convictions, you were ineligible for work release. They pled him to 2. The day he walked in, he was eligible for work release. We didn't agree with that. We denied him for 3.5 months. And then I was called into the sheriff's office and said, "Our lawyers say we are not going to win this." And he had a battery of 20 attorneys. 20 attorneys. Roy Black, Alan Dershowitz, you name them. The sheriff said, "We will owe hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not $1 million in legal fees." He said, "Give him work release." I gave him the toughest work release we could. Ankle monitor with a bracelet, GPS. Made him hire off-duty deputies, permit deputies, and he had to pay the salary of those deputies. And that's where the media come in and said, "Oh, Epstein gave the sheriff's office $260,000. No, he didn't. He paid the salaries of those deputies that guarded him. When we put him in the jail, we had to isolate him. Look what happened in New York. They didn't isolate him, and he put $50 a week in every one of the inmates' canteen, and he controlled that place. We're not going to allow that. We handled that by the rules. It didn't come out till 10 years later, 10 and a half years later, when he was up in jail in New York, that the accusation was made that he had sex with a female. 1 female, not 3. And the attorney refused to give us that information. I don't think it's true.
Thank you, Mr. Gauger. Directed question for you, Mr. Diaz. Leading up to the summer of 2023, you were deputy chief at Bartow Police Department. In July 2023, WFTS, an ABC affiliate out of Tampa Bay, cited an outside consultant's findings of discord among ranks in the police department, reporting that the department's morale was in serious decline and experiencing severe burnout. The article mentioned that you, quote, openly badmouthed Chief Brian Dorman, close quote, and called for his resignation. Mr. Diaz, what is your reaction to this story? And perhaps more importantly, what do you want to say to those who will work for you as sheriff?
Absolutely true to everything you said in that question. I did say that. I did walk into the chief's office and I called him a pathological liar. Because he was a pathological liar, because he lied on a criminal investigation that I conducted. And then they wanted me to cover it up, and I said absolutely not, so therefore I was a whistleblower. So yes, those are facts. He was involved in a high-speed chase out of the city limits into Polk County. Polk County deputies responded, there was an accident that ensued. He refused to take his drug test or his alcohol test or his urine test after the accident, violating city policy and department policy. Period. I was tasked by the city manager to do that investigation. I did the investigation, and it's public record. You can read my memo with the findings on that investigation where I cited that the chief violated his own departmental policy, violated city policy, and was untruthful with the facts in the case. End of story. After that, I had an additional issue. There was no division in the agency. There was a vote of no confidence asked by the union for the chief to be removed and for myself to be placed as chief. And I made it very clear that I had zero interest in being the chief of Bartow Police Department because I already was involved in this campaign. The city manager retaliated and gave me an ultimatum and said, pick either the campaign or the city of Bartow. And I said, I am picking my campaign. Those are the facts. Thank you.
Josie, take it from here.
All right, thank you very much, candidates. If you would like to provide, those are all the questions that we have for tonight. If you would like to give your 2-minute closing statement, Mr. Gauger, we'll start with you.
Look at the history. Look at the experience. Look at who developed the programs. Not somebody who has plans, but somebody who actually developed programs throughout this county. Somebody who brought the police union here in the 1970s and developed benefits for those officers. Because back then, they had no job protection, they had no overtime, they had nothing. But we got that overtime, working with the unions, with the FOP. Those benefits were given to deputies. Today, there's an issue with one of those unions. But you can take a look at who has been successful, who has made changes in these communities, who can return those changes and get those programs back working and get those neighborhoods cleaned up, reduce crime to 80–90% in some of those neighborhoods like we did a decade or so ago. That's the important thing. Based on the history, based on our backgrounds, based on your research that you should do when you read the reports that were written from Bartow Police Department. Read the IA that was done on a car chase. Read the IA and how that was covered up. Sometimes people slide and they should be held accountable. And then they have excuses for everything. Excuses, excuses, excuses. No excuses for me. I make mistakes. I stand up for my mistakes. And I don't have to blame them on somebody else and make up stories to cover them. Look at my history. Look at what
Okay, Mr. Diaz, 2 minutes, please.
Well, I don't have 50 years of experience with Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office, and I certainly don't have 16 years as the undersheriff. And I'm certainly not going to complain about Sheriff Bradshaw when I was his number 2 guy for 16 years and took his money, took his benefits, and went right along with everything. And now the sheriff's office is upside down, and the sheriff himself is a monster. That's hypocrisy, so I'm not even going to play with that. Now, I do not have the awards that are sitting out there on that table for community involvement, for building parks and sidewalks. No, I wasn't that lucky. I didn't have the time to go out there and play with the public. I was too busy actually doing police work. So therefore, my awards are actually combat crosses for bleeding for you men and women here in this county, for actually doing police work, for actually putting bad guys in jail, for actually stopping bandits all across our county, enforcing laws. So I'm sorry that I wasn't able to build bridges and sidewalks and so forth. That's not who I'm going to be. I'm going to be your law and order sheriff. Now, that being said, I will say this. Do your homework. Yes, check my file. You better check his file. Check my file. I never had a vote of no confidence. I wasn't moved from law enforcement to correction and demoted. That didn't happen with me. So you might want to do your research on that. I did not say that I'm a hardcore Republican and anti-abortion, and yet at a Christian coalition meeting breakfast the other day, and then turn around just 4 nights ago on a podcast, which is public record, and said, hey, folks, I actually brought in Planned Parenthood for these young girls to get abortion because they're all getting pregnant too quickly. Wow, you can't have it both ways. So what are you doing? Yes, do your homework. do your research before you go and vote. Thank you.
Thank you to our candidates, Lauro Diaz and Michael Gauger, for their insightful discussions, and to our moderators, Josie Machovec and Cacace, for their questions. A shout out to our fellow co-host, Abby Stafford, who couldn't join us this evening. You will see her and the rest of us in our studio next time on Thursday, August 15th. A big thank you to you, our audience, both here and online, and thank you for joining us tonight. If you enjoyed our event, please consider sponsoring our show or making a donation. We have a donation box on the table outside. Please visit us online at WeTheLocalsPodcast.com. Be sure to vote on or before August 20th. Have a great night, everybody, and be sure to stay local.